years now.
I think so.
Probably ever since I first met you. I think it's probably been 7 or 8 years. We've been through a lot.
Yeah.
You've taught me a lot, and so we've got an opportunity now. I think everything in like ministry, honestly, I think I've mostly learned from you. I'd say at least 90% of it. So we got an opportunity just to kind of ask you some questions.
Let's do it.
So that's what we're gonna do. Share just real quick a little bit about your story, like where you are, where you come from, where God has you now, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was raised in a Christian home. I was saved when I was real young, about 4 or 5 years old. I think, I'm not sure when, but I moved at that time, and it did happen.
Yeah.
And grew up, great parents, love Jesus, love serving God, love being involved with the church. Gave my life to maybe ministry, and I wanted to be a youth pastor. So honestly, summer camp, Clear Lake Camp in Iowa, I went forward and said I wanted to be a youth pastor. Partially because I saw what he did, and I thought, well, I can do that.
You were a youth pastor at the time?
Yeah.
On stage?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that guy too, he didn't seem very good either. So I thought, man, I could probably do that. I ain't good at much else, but that seems simple. And so I'm not, that's not the most spiritual reasonings, but that's probably what mine was. And went to school at Grand Rapids Baptist College. And in lieu of maybe a basketball scholarship, if I would get my grades up, I had very poor grades, and obviously, the coach took me into the office before the end of the year and said, "Hey, are you trying?" And I said, "Man, I'm hustling out in the court. I was practicing with them, and he said, I thought I'm doing." He said, "No, not in the court, in your classes." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, I thought it was," and he said, "Well, you're." Profs don't. You're not going to make it. So at that point is when that was kind of me getting kicked out of college. I got to finish the year, but definitely didn't get a scholarship and didn't get any good grades. So I went out and got a real job. And honestly, I think it was a kind of pivotal point in my life where I left college. But I also left kind of ministry and went out into the world, and because I kind of felt nobody's going to hire a youth pastor. I didn't really have a church association at the time because I'd moved away from home. And I thought, well, I better figure things out. And at $3.35 an hour, you got to work a lot of hours to survive. And so I got a job in the gym business, and I've been doing that ever since. I remember kind of, we would work with club gyms at the time, and we'd go into cities. And at the time, back in the 80s, the gym business was a little bit more paganish than it is now. Everybody's kind of into fitness now, where back then, it was more of a club kind of a field. And, I got involved with a guy that taught us how to do sales, taught us how to do management, and actually did pretty good. And we started making some money. We started traveling with these guys. All had cigarette boats in Florida and condos on the beach and nice houses and cars. And I thought, well, man, this is a life. I'm making $3.35 an hour. I start with these guys, and I'm making $50,000 a year, which back in the 80s, I was rich, or I thought it was. And I just remember being in Madison, Wisconsin, in a hotel room. That's where we were staying as we worked at these gyms, and found myself kind of looking at all the guys that I was following, and everyone had a different story. This guy was getting a divorce. This guy was hooked on coke. This guy over here was having problems finding his kids. And this guy, it was a nightmare. And these guys are all people I was trying to be. And I thought, man, I've reached to the top, and I don't want to be like these guys. And it was just a point in my life where it really kind of brought me back to what I had as a young person, what I knew was right, what I followed God's word. And it wasn't just to teach your kids. It was like, that's a better way to live your life. And that's what brought me back into the church. But I went into the church with a different perspective. I went in there because I needed God, and I wanted to serve God. I haven't had a perfect life since then, but honestly, I understood my role in the process of being sanctified and what I needed to do to help others and serve others and glorify God in this world.
That's good. That's super cool.
Yeah. So I've been a youth pastor. I've been a pastor. I've planted a church. I've restarted a church. I've done a lot of different things along the way. I've always had the gym business for my job.
Yep.
But this has always been been my income.
There you go.
That's
That's
good?
awesome. That's good. That's
All
crazy.
right.
And then you're out in Granbury right now.
Granbury, Texas. Yes. Yeah. So I'm there, and I travel a little bit still.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you start us off with a question that you had, whichever one that you wanted to do.
Man, we had some good ones for you. So if you guys don't know Wade is like the guy when it comes to youth. Like me and Caleb, probably most everything we've learned about youth, we've learned from this guy. And so the fact that we have him on a podcast is super exciting. So we had some questions we kind of brainstorming this morning. And I had a question for you. Something that's come up in our youth ministry is we have some students who want to go into ministry. You just shared with us, you were at a camp in Iowa and you felt the tug of ministry, like you wanted to do that. I felt that tug at a camp in Texas. And we have these youth kids that want to be in ministry, want to be a youth pastor. They're 16, 17 years old. One's 15 years old.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them to help prepare them right now? What are some steps they can take right now to help prepare them to be a youth pastor? And then kind of a second part of that is us as like their leaders. How can we better equip them in that for them to become good ministry leaders?
Well, I think more than anything else, they need to see the fact that there's a difference between a call into a vocational ministry and a call to serve the Lord. Not everybody needs to give up what they're good at or what that could produce income for themselves to be full-time in ministry. I think there's a misconception out there. And this is my view. There's a lot of people that I love and are friends of mine that might have a different view on this. But I think as a young person, sometimes we make it a false binary that you can either be full-time Christian or you can be and serve in a church or you can have a job. You can't do both. You got to give up one. And I think that's unfair for a young person. They're wanting to know if they should get this car or start this to make a decision like that. I understand the call, and I do. I think I felt that, but I think that to put that onto them, if they have to decide what they're going to do for a living 25 years from now with their kids and their wife and everything, to make them have this guilt to live under for life, I'm not sure you're able to do that. Certainly you get somebody in an environment like a camp setting, or you get to them in a place where they've changed their life in a way and you're there, they're going to look up to you as a hero. And there's going to be something inside of them that wants to be just like you. That's not necessarily a call from God to not work and to earn your pay from a church. I don't find that in Scripture. I also see it can be very devastating for people that should probably be a plumber or should probably be a nurse or should probably be something else in this world, but because they had that one moment where they felt something, they are under this guilt of, if I don't give my life to making money at the church, I'm forsaking this world, or I'm not living. And it's like, really? That right there. And so I would say, first and foremost, you need to tell them, listen, I think it's great that you serve God at the way you can right now. You need to do all the way. So whether you're at school right now, you need to serve God there. You can't departmentalize God into my youth department, or you can't do that. You've got to love God and be a part of that. And so if they want to build a youth department and be a youth pastor, and they need to be working with the people around them right now. I think Clementine was my best example of that.
Yep.
Shoot, she was a youth pastor. Whether she's a pastor or not, that's a side issue. But when she was a kid in school, she was bringing kids to church. And she was teaching kids Bible studies. She was doing the things that a youth pastor would do. I think I've told you, or I've told pretty much everybody, if you're so busy doing what you are going to be doing as a youth pastor that you don't have time to work anymore, to me, that's the call. You don't have time to make money. And then you're going into the church and saying, hey, will you pay for me to do this? Because I want to spend more time here, but I have to pay for these bills. To me, the thing. Secondary to that would be, you need to have if you're going to get into a church situation, either you have to have experience or you have to have a diploma. I mean, I don't know if there's two ways around that. Either you have to be good at something already where they can see you have a track record to say, hey, you did this already, so I'm going to give you a shot working with our kids. Or you walk in there with a degree from Baptist Bible College or a biblical college that you can show somebody to say, hey, you know, at least these guys put a stamp on me saying I have a basic understanding of the Bible and a basic understanding of what I'm about ready to do with your kids. One of those two things needs to happen. I would think both of them would be the best option, to have a degree and have experience, but one of them is going to have to happen to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
I would say this, loving the Bible, knowing the Bible, being able to discern the Bible is important. If you're out there leading people to Christ and you don't know the Word of God, you have an issue. There might be some practical training you can give somebody and help them, and even an inexperienced Christian, a young Christian, can help somebody else know Jesus better. And I'm not saying you have to have a certain period of time that way, but I do think you have a general overall understanding of what the Bible says. So college will help you do that. But it's not the only thing out there. There's so many things. Stuff like this is very helpful when we're out there teaching about so many different ways to learn right now. You just need to make sure you're a learner and you are passionate about knowing God's Word.
That's good. I like what you said about like us as leaders, like pushing them to serve where they're at. Like in the local church, like in this youth group, there's so many opportunities to serve, right? And I think as we coach them and push them into that, like, hey, like you're here, you're growing in your faith, you got saved, you're being discipled, like here's some practical things for you to do. And I think in that they can see if this is really for them, if it's a passion, or if they're kind of just wanting to be on stage or something like that. I think they can figure that out more while they are learning and discipling and serving in their local church. Yeah. I like what you said with that. That's really good.
Yeah, I think giving them the opportunities too, like you give them the opportunities to kind
That's
of
good. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, well, they do have time on stage, or they do have, like, I mean, that's one thing we do is, like, if somebody has a passion to sing, get up there, you know?
We throw them up there.
Throw them up.
Yeah, they got to get their reps in.
You got to get in there. You got to see if you like it. Is this something that you could be doing? And, you know, probably 90% of the time they suck at it.
Are we sponsored by Chick-fil-A, by the way?
Yeah, we got to turn that.
I don't know if that's...
Hey, product placement, we're sorry, Chick-fil-A.
Hey, we want you to be sponsored.
There we go.
But they want to, right? They want to do that. They have the desire to do that. I think that's one thing, is like you feed that desire, and that maybe blossoms into something more.
If they're
some
singing,
don't, some do. You know?
Yeah, if they're singing, we might have to turn their mic off. You know,
Yeah,
not tell them.
I
I think you threw me up there one week. We turned that mug all the way down.
Do you know Mason? Mason, the kid that, I don't know if I'll be giving a shout out now, but Mason's awesome now. So he's grown.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of our youth at the very beginning. So I gave him one of those chances to get on stage. And so I took him out there and I had him go through a book that we were going through and teach him how to prepare a lesson and stuff. And we did it. And he did his first lesson. It was his Wednesday night. And I put him on stage. And we had a rough group. I mean, good kids, bad kids, crazy kids. But it was one of those nights. And a lot of things going on, so I immediately left the stage, put him up there, and started controlling some of the kids and sitting down there, and I listen up, and he's about to say, that's all I got. And I'm like, dude, you're done? I just sat down here to get everybody out of lecture. I think it's I don't even know where he started or where he went to or anything. It was so quick that I'm like, okay. So I ran back on stage. What are you saying about that, Wes? And so... all I'm saying is it doesn't matter where you start. So it just matters you get better.
Yeah.
But if you don't start, you don't even know what to get better on. But it can happen.
Yeah. For you guys watching, if you know Mason, you know that he would not be doing that now.
No, he's awesome.
That's from all the reps of doing it over and over. And the chance you gave him to get up there, I'm thankful for the chances I gave.
Now, I might rethink that now because it wasn't the smartest thing to do. I thought he'd do a better job, but and it wasn't a bad job. It just was very short. Very short.
That's so funny. We've had a couple students get up recently and have done the same thing.
They might be listening to this.
That's okay.
They did an awesome job, by the way. That's what I was saying.
We gotta get honest feedback, guys. If Quinn's watching, sorry, dog.
We love you. But that's what we said. I told them, guys, it's gonna go quick, so don't be afraid to, you know what I mean, settle into it, settle whatever. And they get up there, and then afterwards they're like, dude, that was the fastest thing. I did not expect it to go so fast. So it's pretty funny. But you give them the opportunity, and you know they can take it. And
dude, for me, I get out of breath up there. Like I'll be running through, and I'll be trying to get my points. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like crash and burn, dog.
Yep. 100%. No, that's good stuff. I think that's awesome. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
This is maybe a little bit more foundational, but I think it'd be cool for our students to hear, because it's something that we continually talk about as far as like why we exist, like why we doing what we're doing, right? So question for you is, what in your opinion are the key things for successful ministry? And you could take it as a youth ministry. I know there's all kinds of ministries, but we're talking about youth. What are some key things that are just like, hey, you have to have this to be successful, to be healthy, to be right, ABCD, those kind of things?
I think every youth group is going to take on kind of some of the strengths and weaknesses of where the youth pastor is going to be, unless the youth pastor is smart enough to understand that there needs to be at least 5 things that, in my mind, what the Bible teaches. This isn't mine. This is Rick Warren's and Doug Fields' example. They need the 5 purposes of youth ministry. And if you don't have a purpose, you don't have a direction. If you have a direction, you never have anything to measure by whether you're doing good or bad. It's like, well, you wake up in the mornings, I think I did good yesterday, but I wasn't sure where I went. Yeah. I'm not sure where I came from, so I'm not sure if we did do good. And you always feel that, and generally you don't feel like you do. Maybe some people might be proud about that, but most of the time you live in an attitude of guilt. Like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I can't do this. And you always feel like that because you don't even know where you came from or where you're going. But if you're wise about that, you will need to have discipleship. One thing you need to do is have a strong emphasis on discipleship. Kids who need to be growing. If they're getting saved and they're not growing, then it's not healthy. Number 2, you need to have evangelism. You need to be leading people to Christ. If it's all about just digging deeper and we need to get these kids deeper, but the lost world around you is dying and going to hell, you're really not getting very deep because you're not doing what God's told you to do. And you also need to have worship. You need to have a strong emphasis on the glory of God in this world that we have, whether it be in music, whether it be in just a reverent understanding of who God is and lifting him up. You need to have fellowship. You need to have fun. I mean, this world offers a lot of fun in it, and if your youth group is all about evangelism, we need to do this, and it's all about the work, and they're not enjoying the fellowship of it, you're missing out as a youth group. And what's the last one?
Service. Yeah, ministry.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point. And that's why I love the most of it. And what my strength is, I think, is going out and doing different things. And that's why I've always encouraged you guys to go and not just be so focused on this youth ministry. When I was youth pastor, we used to go and get water bottles and hand them out at the parks and maybe go to a feeding center and things like that too, which are all good things. But I think even better than that is, what's a better way to teach young people about service than going into somebody else's youth group and helping them build their youth department? I know I'm calling it a youth department. It tells you how old I am, but student ministry. But wouldn't that be a cool thing if you take your kids in there and they could train them? Then they're understanding what service really is all about. Most of the time, it's all about building up my thing. And I think that's important. I think things that are alive grow. But it's one of the things, if you can help somebody else, it's not just about growing your kingdom, it's growing God's kingdom. And if you can get them to see that I can be involved in a lot of things that are growing, and again, not to say there's not a local church. I love the local church. That's why I've given my life to serve the local church. However, it's not just the local church we're here to be promoting. It's Jesus. And so I'd say those are the 5 things that you need to be focused on, and those are the metrics that you're going to have to use to say whether or not you're doing a good job or not.
That's good.
That's awesome.
That's kind of a segue into another one of our questions. Is do you want to run with it?
Yeah, I'll hit it. So we were actually talking to somebody literally yesterday about this, and I thought, oh, that'd be a cool thing to talk about. So that's kind of one thing. Per your encouragement, even just doing stuff. I think we have a passion for that as well, is going around and helping other people, talking to other youth pastors. Just, hey, how can I come and help you tonight, right? We don't have something on Wednesday, but they do. So, hey, let's come over and we'll hang out with you guys. We'll do whatever. So we were talking about that. And another dude, he had a problem with, what he didn't have an issue was with other people helping. What his thing was is that students bounce around other churches, other ministries, right? And so my question was, is that something that in your experience has been, like, because that's something we notice, right? We've got students that are right now in our ministry, growing, serving, doing all kinds of stuff. We also have students that are in our ministry that maybe are at that community level, that church level. So they're not super deep, but they're there. But they also go to other ministries on Wednesdays or on other things, but they're plugged in because maybe they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend that goes to another thing, right? And so there's just this idea of, like, not necessarily that they're church hopping, but they also, that they're being fed from other places, right? And so, first question is that something that has always happened? Like, is that something that's just been there forever? Because I don't have the experience in knowing that, or the time. And then second question is like, is that unhealthy, right? Or is that a good thing? You know, or how do we encourage that or discourage that? You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot there, but I will say this. I guess I'll start from the worst case scenario, and that's what we were talking about, that, hey, what happens if we lose all of our people because we've introduced them to different ministries that are better than ours, or that they just have a girlfriend at, or they just, it's close to their house or whatever, and then I have now raised a guy up and he's at somebody else's ministry. I mean, that's, I think, the general overall fear that everybody has with that being the case. They're not concerned that they may learn more about God. They're not concerned about they may start growing. They're not, that's not their fear, is that, man, I get these guys in other youth groups and they may love Jesus more. That's not really their concern. Their concern is what happens if they leave and they don't come back and they stay where they are at that way. And I understand that, but let me say this. I knew a guy one time that was exercising, and he exercised all of his life, and he died like 40 years old of a heart attack while he was running.
Wow.
It's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate. So should I not tell everybody in the world to stop running because I knew a guy that did this once?
No.
You see, the thing that we're most fearful of sometimes stops us from doing the thing that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't. I mean, things are going to happen. And you started the question off with, hey, you know, in our society today, people are church hopping. People are doing this and that. One, they've done that in a small sense. A lot of people have done that. I think it is more happening more often because there's more of awareness of what's out there. You can see more churches and what they're doing on social media. You can see. Used to be, if you didn't get a flyer from somebody, you didn't know what the youth group down the street was doing.
Yeah.
You might see something posted someplace or maybe a big event or something. But you didn't know. But now, every kid knows what every youth group is doing all over the place. They even know what they're doing in Utah or California. You're much more aware of that. So I think because of that, people are more apt to do that. So yeah, I think that is a thing that's out there. I don't think that's the healthiest thing. That's not really what we're talking about. I think you do need to be a part of a local body of believers. But the fact that this could happen, I don't necessarily think you need to be afraid of doing this service. I think explaining why you're going over here is as important to go and do that. You know, this is your church. This is your path. But if it did happen that they stopped and they started going there, probably what's going to happen is they're going to date somebody. That's what happens. You lose somebody because they start dating this girl. Now it's like, they want to touch both. It's like, well, dude, they'll break up. Don't worry about it. They're not going to get married. They're going to break up. They'll be back. But to me, the key is, well, make your thing better. Make your thing better. They'll come back to your place. I don't know if that's the right advice or not. But I don't think what could happen should stop you from doing all the benefits of what will happen by getting a person to see that you should be serving that. I understand the fear, and I think it's a legitimate fear, but I don't know necessarily it's not going to happen either way. I mean, you could protect them all you want and keep them all in your group, and they still see something online and go to that guy's church next week anyway, and then you haven't done the benefits, but you lost the guy anyway. So I don't know, by letting people have the freedom to enjoy other things and be a part of things, if that's an evil thing. I do think there is the value. God wrote the letter to a church in Ephesus. God appointed people in charge of the church, and he set up a structure for each church. So I believe in the local church. However, Christ died for the church as a whole, not the church at this location, at this place. And so Jesus is the most important thing. And sometimes this church may not be the right thing for this kid. That one might be. Are you all right with that as a youth pastor?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. How do we combat the tribalness of that? Like, this church is how can we better communicate with each other, like each church, right? How do we team up? Like, we have Ohio Student Ministries here in Ohio. You guys down in Granbury, you have a network of churches that do stuff together. But we don't really see that widespread around the country. There's pockets of it. And obviously you've seen it at different churches you've been with. Do you think there's a benefit in networking with another church? Like, if you know the youth pastor down the road, right, and you have kids that go to both youth groups, right? Do you think there's value in that? There's safety in that? Do you think or do we like stay in our lane?
Yeah.
What's your take?
My opinion is you need to bring value to somebody for them to want you to be there. And so if you walk into a group and you're a youth pastor and say, hey, you need to come with me and we're going to have this program, we're going to do this big thing, you may have some fortune that way. Most people are really concerned with their world. And although we have this little conversation and we believe this way, most people believe a little bit different. That I have enough work to do with just what these kids, and my pastor's got me doing this now, and I've got to do this now. I don't have time to be a part of these little groups that you're in. Although they could really use that. I mean, you're talking two different things. The group itself or the youth pastors themselves. So I'll touch on both of them. But as far as the youth pastor goes, it's a very valuable thing to have other guys giving you ideas. It's a more valuable thing to realize that it's not just about what happened, whether it was good or bad on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Things are happening everywhere, and so God is still, I just remember Elijah, he said, hey, there's people in the mountains where he felt discouraged, and he said, no, you're not alone. There's all kinds of people up here. It's neat to see, there's other people meeting, that it's a bigger cause than what's just happened at my youth group on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
When 4 people showed up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
But hey, this is just what's happening here. I need to get better here. And those things can challenge you in other places. So I think from the youth pastor standpoint, I think that's important. But also from the group standpoint, how do you get, what was your question?
Like, is there value in partnering with other ministries?
Yeah, so from the youth pastor standpoint, I think there's that's just one thing, but I think there's a lot of things you can learn from other people. You can be encouraged by other people.
Yeah.
You can have accountability with other people, and you can see people that are, you're part of a church. You have one person that's youth pastor.
Yep.
You got a pastor and seniors ministries, you got the kids ministry. They're not concerned about the youth the way you are, but other youth pastors in your same community, man, that gives you a bond and excitement towards what you're doing.
Yep.
And you're helping them.
Yeah.
The second thing is for the youth, I think it's important for them to see, because what happens if you're the only thing that represents the church in that person's life, once he gets aged out, hopefully you have something for the college class, but maybe not. And if he just sees, it's all about this group, it's all about this group, it's all about this group, and it's not about the church, then once he's aged out and you give him the boot, where else is he going to go?
Yeah.
He hasn't realized that my gifts and abilities are for the church, not just for this group.
Yeah.
And so I think introducing him to, that's why camps are so cool, is because you get to bring them to all kinds of different groups, and they get to work with other kids and get to see that it's a bigger thing than just my little group.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a real value for them to see that church isn't just what's happening. It's not just the only influence in his life is you as a youth pastor, and the only style is just you as a youth pastor. I think it's really neat for them to see that there's other people out there and other ways of doing this that aren't just what we have. So I think it's a huge benefit to the kids. But again, bigger than that is just it fulfills one of the 5 principles of service. Yeah. To get to the point where you're willing to use your best kids to go over to a different youth group and help them build their program, that's an act of service. Yeah. And you would think, that'd be for fun. Well, it could be for fun, but you could teach them how to be selfless in that situation. You could teach them how to do it in a way where it's not just them taking. You'll be surprised once they get back into your group how much more active they are with your group because of what they did with that group.
Yeah, well, on the flip side, you might be going to, like, down the road to a youth group that's, like, really, like, popping, right? 100 plus kids, like, going crazy. But what if you take them to a group where there's 5 kids? Yeah. What if you take them to a group where it's not that fun? It's not an exciting environment. Yeah. They don't know, like, those kids might not even know what this other youth group is doing. They've never seen that energy. Yeah. And so for them to walk in that and say, wow, like, we got a good thing going on, but let's bring that life to them. I think that's super beneficial. So we're kind of the flip side of what we're talking about is the fear of losing your kids to a better youth group. But, like, you take your kids into this environment, like, there's youth groups all around that struggle. Yeah. And they don't see ministry done this way. And where we've had some success, some other people have had more success than we have. But I think that'd be a cool thing too, is like, why would you take your kids to Guatemala on a missions trip when you can take them down the street, and show them the love of God? Yeah. And it's like, why would we keep our kids from that? That's kind of my take, but kind of the flip side of what we've been talking about. It's like the fear of losing kids. Well, and like you said, you bring, like, those kids go experience that, and you bring them back into your group, they're like, oh, we need to ramp it up. There's stuff I can do right now that I can do right now. That's super good, Wade.
Yep. Yeah. I think one of the things I've always tried to ask our students, just from talking to us and doing all kinds of stuff, is like when I try to take people to things, it's like how like I want you guys to go into this with open eyes. Like this is a ministry that does amazing at this, and so I want you to see, hey, when we come back, how can we do better at what they're doing, right?
There you go.
Get advice, man. And I think even for me, like there are times when, and this is just vulnerable, is like you don't want to be on the negative side of that. You don't want to be the person that's like, oh, you could do that better. You know what I mean? To where somebody else is doing it really well, and it's like, oh, frick, we don't do that good. You know what I mean? And it's hard to
beat that out.
It's a youth podcast. It's a youth
podcast. But you take that negative thing. It's hard to take that advice, and it's really a look at yourself. It's like, crap. We need to do better at this. And like you were saying, the 5 purposes, right? Like it plugs into that. Like, oh shoot, we could do a lot better at evangelism because we're not going out, we're not reaching.
There you go.
People,
We can't put our head in the sand
or
when
we're
it comes
not
to youth ministry.
doing this.
We got to keep our eyes open.
Yeah, I will say one thing that I've learned a lot recently is from, and this may another shout out to Mason, is like he when he was here, and he's still a good friend of ours, but like he was able to see things that I didn't. You know what I mean? He just had a different perspective.
In his youth group, or when he came to help
when
you?
he came to help
us.
us, he was like, "Dude, you need to do this," and we did it.
That's good.
It changed the whole field. It may have been a small thing, but
some people be intimidated by bringing somebody else into your group,
100%.
especially somebody that's a high energy person like a Mason
100%.
or anybody like that. But it goes back to the same thing. What are you trying to build your kingdom? Or you trying to build his kingdom? And if that's the case, teaming up with somebody that's I mean, look, if you had a chance to bring LeBron James on your team for a night, I don't know if it could ever happen, but that'd be a cool thing to say. Listen, we're kind of weak in this area, so what if I, and it's like, wow, that'd be great. I wouldn't care. As long as he was scoring points at our end, we're good.
Yeah, exactly.
But yet we have the opportunity to do that as Christians, and yet it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is our group. He could do this, he could say that, and you're really worried he's gonna make you look stupid.
Yeah, you got to take criticism if you want to grow, and not take it like to heart. Like we're just trying to build a kingdom.
Yeah.
And so any advice, like we love Mason. Mason, if you're watching, like we love you, dude. And he's had so many good insights. Where like just
some of the kids you work with now,
would
not be here apart from him.
Mason led to Christ, or Mason went to the basketball courts and told him to come to church. And so just being able to take criticism, not taking it to heart. Like we got to help each other in ministry. And so I think we need to be more cohesive in ministry, not be so tribal. I think that's something that we've been seeing.
I think that is a big, to be honest with you, I think that's going to be the next big thing that's going to happen in ministry, is because students are so, information is out there. There's so much stuff out there. Instead of fighting that, why would you not get on that train and run with that?
Well, you just think that's a great example to bring up, because you got to figure, we all think, we live in the 21st century here, that kids don't stay where they grew up. Used to be when I was a kid, you go to GM after, when you'd stay there for the rest of your life, and it was in the same town, and so the likelihood of you being a senior at the same church you were a kid at, was pretty high. Yeah, but today, what's the chances of your kids actually being even located in Dayton, Ohio, 20 years from now? Yep. So what's going to teach them to go into a new environment, or even to search out what a good church would look like, and then kind of fill into a gap that might be there?
Yep.
Apart from you guys showing them how to do that.
Yeah.
And you could walk in, if you've walked into a youth group and you've turned it on, that's one of the best things that camp allows us to do, is teach people to walk into other people's youth groups and help them kind of create some energy, help them find the people on the fringes, help them do work at that thing. So if you did that on a regular scale, you're training your kids to do something they're going to do at some point, most often.
Again, just appreciate all your insight, helped us out a ton, just from even behind the scenes. You don't get all the credit, but
I think the cool thing about this is obviously I get the opportunity to see people start here and go here because I'm old. You guys are in the middle of that, starting here to get here, and you're still working. We had one class of kids that you've worked with, or 2 classes now?
You mean as
how long you been here?
Seniors? I've been here for helping for 3 years.
3 years, okay. So but when you start to see them start to roll back around and stuff like that, it just gives you more juice that than you have right now. And so I just really encourage you guys, as you do this, to realize how big of what you're doing is. A lot of times you don't see it until you look back and think, wow, that really changed that. That dude's raising kids. I would have neutered him. And
Some kids we want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's no way you should be having kids, but he's actually doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And so when you get to see that, it encourages you to keep on going. But you don't have those things yet.
That's good.
So I'd really just understand that you're doing a big deal here. I mean, God has given you His Word, and He's putting you in the middle of a group of people that a lot of them don't know God. And apart from you expressing it to them in a way that's real practical, they can understand it. They may never know God. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I appreciate it. We'll catch you guys next time.